Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Gordon Telfer, and on this occasion I am joined by my close associate Sean McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Bill Wyman and Mandy Smith of the Terrace get together. That is right, we are going to become friends at the age of 13, indulge in sexual relations at the age of 14, get married at 18, get divorced 2 years later, and hopefully talk about some lower league Scottish football along the way.
Different times, Craig.
These get harder and harder to do, these intros, because otherwise, Sean, remember the ones I said to you, the ones that are too hot for the podcast?
Yes, yes.
We might need to go into them. They're the sort of,
Terrace After Dark. Fowler won't allow them to be used. It's as simple as that.
If you say, my name's Sean McGuigan, and you know what happens, and then just, right, let's talk about the football. That's what will happen after a big 5 minutes against some victims of murder are mentioned. But Sean, just not to keep on going on about the very seedy Bill Wyman, you got to say that's completely unacceptable from his part. But listen, I've copy and pasted this from Bill Wyman's Wikipedia page. Now, bear with me here. In 1993, Wyman's son, Stephen Wyman, married Patsy Smith, the 46-year-old mother of Bill's ex-wife, Mandy Smith. Stephen was 30 years old at the time. Consequently, the ex-Rolling Stone became his own son's ex-son-in-law, the father-in-law of his ex-mother-in-law, as well as the step-grandfather of his ex-wife.
So the thing is, I don't really understand that, but it's still very funny.
It's like one of those riddles, and then when you actually you break it down, you know that one. It's like where the riddle's like a doctor has to operate on a patient, but he's not allowed. Why is the reason? It turns out the patient's his own son. This is the Rolling Stones equivalent of that.
Imagine if, I don't know if you ever watched. I've maybe only watched maybe one episode ever. Is it Who Am I, where celebrities look back on their family tree?
Is it Who Do You Think You Are?
Who do you think you are? Imagine if 200 years from now you have somebody who was from that family who's looking back on their family tree, and they get to that, like, my goodness, can we just park that? Let's not mention that at all.
I quite like that. So everyone's great grandfather were Norman conquestors or someone was part of Tudor royalty. Imagine you look back and your granddad's a nonce. I mean, listen, questionable judgment. Well, what a bass player. Now, Sean and I are going to be doing a patented 3-game podcast.
Now, you can't deny that. A good bass player.
He was a good bass player. He played a lot of Rolling Stones' biggest hits. Now,
that's true.
That is true.
That's also on Wikipedia.
I'm just trying to think of puns like Jumping Jack Flasher and stuff like that. Oh dear! Right. Now, this is a patented 3-game podcast. If you're thinking this is a good format, I'd like to give this a go myself. Don't bother. This is our intellectual property. We can and we will take you to court. Myself and Sean, we are two very litigious men. Now we'll be looking at one game in the Championship, another from League One and another from League Two. And if we can just about manage it, Sean, we'll see if we can have a laugh along the way. But before we get going, how's everything otherwise?
I am very well. How are you?
Yeah, good man, good. It's obviously we finished up recording a View from the Terrace last week. We had a brilliant time in Aberdeen. I thought that was the best episode of season 6. Both sides of the 20 episodes. Really enjoyed it. The crowd were absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
Harold Stavron was a great guest. Actually, I think he was perhaps one of the best guests we've had in the entire series, let alone just that season. And it's great. It's very, very rewarding. And while I'm very sorry that it's finished up for the time being, there's still plenty of football to go, I am quite grateful for the wee break, for the wee while.
You're saying that, but that will only last about maybe 2 weeks at the most. And then you'll be like, oh God, I wish... you get to a Wednesday, I really wish I was sitting in an industrial estate in Edinburgh.
See last week, in fact, see on Monday there, we normally come in from work and it's a production meeting. I was like, what do I do? It's like I've had nothing to do with myself. I went out for a walk instead, thinking I should really be doing something here. But then I thought I've got a fanzine article to write for this Terrace Podcast fanzine, and I am struggling. I am struggling to commit my thoughts to paper. It is going to take me ages. And it was like, Fowler, what is the very, 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 very latest this can be in by? And what I'm going to do is to try and get it in even later than that, because I'm really, really struggling to pull this together.
That comment about when is the latest that I can submit this article, I saw it flash up on my mobile phone, and I was picturing Craig Fowler reading that comment, and his reaction, it would be along the lines of, for fuck's sake.
Aye.
Because he doesn't want it at its latest.
No.
He wants it ASAP.
Yeah, he wants it at his earliest. When he sent us a message,
ultimately,
saying,
yes.
When he contacted me saying, can you write an article? And I said, yes, here's one I've written already. That's ideally what he would have wanted, rather than me sitting in front of my laptop, like writing about like 3 words and rewarding myself with 25 minutes of internet time. Horrendous work ethic.
Have you written that article about Michael McIndoe's autobiography?
No, and the reason why, I've only read part 1 of it. I think it's divided into 5 parts. I actually skipped to the very end, and basically it finishes with him saying he was cleared of all charges for fraud. That's pretty much like the final words. But it's good. It's good. It's very easy to read, and I suppose that's kind of what you want in a sportsman's autobiography. Remember, like Andrea Pirlo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I think that theirs was like very, very ghost-written to the point where it almost became like a parody. This is not. This is just nice and easy.
I often find that most footballing autobiographies are very much working class person done good. Like they're all a bit quite similar.
What is the best football autobiography you've read?
I thought was it maybe Tony Adams? He's maybe had more than one now. I thought Tony Adams was quite interesting when he was discussing his kind of descent in alcoholism. I thought that was quite interesting. They're all very, very similar, to be fair.
I really liked Roy Keane's first autobiography, which finished up with his trip to Saipan. I thought that was really, really well done, and actually that kind of read like a thriller, the way you were just flicking through the pages there just as fast as you can. And I thought these are the second one that he did, I think that was serialised, and that was a wee bit kind of leaning into a bit too humorous. And I think partly Roy Keane's actually a very funny guy, just what you saw on the pitch, he was just a big competitor. I thought that the first autobiography from the early 2000s, I thought that was really good, and that was like quite a troubled guy. Like very angry, very like this competition that he had within himself. And whereas the second one, I mean, funny story about Robbie Savage leaving a voice message saying like "what's up," and him deciding not to pursue the transfer. But
was it Keane? Was it his first book when he said? And I thought this was weird to the point where I actually didn't believe it, but maybe I was the case. Where they'd won the European Cup, so they beat Bayern Munich in the final. Obviously, 2 late goals. Everybody celebrating in the dressing room, and he said it was something along the lines of he couldn't quite understand why everybody was celebrating quite so much.
Yeah,
because as far as he was concerned, it was now about the next game. Yeah, it's like, well, but wait a minute, like you don't have a next game. There's like 3 months or whatever until the next game. Just enjoy the moment.
That's what he said. He said that he saw the way that some of those players were celebrating, like he just knew they wouldn't be at Manchester United for much longer. And it's like you have won, perhaps like one of the most famous European Cup finals of all time. Probably next to, I think, the Liverpool's comeback against AC Milan's perhaps overshadowed it. But one of the most famous Cup finals of all time. You win a treble that season. Christ, I'd hate to see what happened with Roy Keane if he was playing for Stennismuir this season. He'd be furious.
8 consecutive draws. Was it 8 draws?
8 draws, and listener, you better believe we will be talking about Stennismuir, because the last time Sean and I spoke about them, I spoke about what I thought was the greatest day of my life, but we're going to be talking about what I definitely know is the greatest day of my life. But that's coming up later on. That's the main course. We're going to start off by, it's really a champion special, this episode. We are 10 minutes in, and finally we're going to be able to talk about the football. That's you talking about books, Sean.
Yeah, sorry about
that. Don't apologise to me. Apologise to the listener.
Sorry, listener.
Obviously that's quite all right. Let's be honest. There's only one person, and we know who this person is, and they're weird. Right, just let's say that. But anyway, this is a champion special because we're going to be looking at the winners of the Championship, the winners of League One, and the winners of League Two. And we'll start, Sean, in the Championship. We are going to Airdrie, where the Diamonds were taking on Dundee United. And effectively, that's Dundee United got the point that they needed to ensure they were champions. 0-0 draw. Not the most engaging of games, but one worth talking about because of what happened. It was live on the BBC Scotland cameras. It was a decent game, not the most exciting. Sean, what did you make of this?
How did you consume this match? Did you watch it on the Friday evening, or did you watch Airdrie's highlights?
I watched it on the Friday evening when it went out, and then just before you and I joined this discussion, I watched Airdrie's highlights package, which suspiciously looked very similar to the BBC Scotland broadcast, but with a different commentator, and the crowd, the ambient noise, and about like a half a second delay.
But what I thought was odd, because I think they did say that they were able to use it with thanks to BBC Scotland, or whatever they said. But they had their own commentator.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Airdrie's... But I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm.
But Airdrie's highlights have never had a commentator up until last weekend. But then after about 5 minutes, he disappears. Then Ali Lam and Mikey Stewart comes in for about 60 seconds, and he comes back for the last 2 minutes. I thought it was very good. I just thought it was unusual.
Do you think the Diamonds TV reached out to Mikey Stewart and Al Lam and said, "Listen, guys, do you fancy a wee cameo here?"
But it was almost like he commentated on the entire game and then said to them, "Listen, I'm away for a pie. Any chance you can fill in for 5 minutes? Hopefully, nothing will happen that you have to discuss."
And likewise,
whoever it was, I thought it was good. But in terms of the game, I thought the managers, I thought McCabe and Rhys McCabe and Jim Goodwin kind of summed it up pretty well afterwards in terms of champions and in terms of Jim Goodwin. It kind of referenced the fact that they may have had a couple of celebrations during the week, and let's face it, like they had wrapped it up the week previous. I didn't think United played particularly well.
No,
which Goodwin alluded to, with the exception of Jack Walton. I thought it was absolutely excellent. And in terms of McCabe and the Airdrie fans in general, they would have been delighted at how they bounced back from that defeat at Partick Thistle, because like it's weird. What I would say is slightly strange about Airdrie this season is that, see, when they have an off day, they seem to have a really off day.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a poor record against Airdrie, and against Ayr United. And you think, well, why is that? And I don't, if you're to refer back to those games, don't think there's anything that Ayr United are necessarily doing. I think defensively against Ayr, they've had real bad days. I thought similarly against Partick Thistle, defensively they didn't look sound, which is very unusual for them. But they bounced back. Thought they were excellent, and regardless of how poorly United played, I thought Airdrie were excellent, which bodes well going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so. There wasn't. It was a match of very few clear-cut chances. I thought that Airdrie they created space for themselves, but it was a lot of space in front of the goal. A lot of the shots were like from 18 yards, 20 yards. Yep. And I've got to say, like, you're absolutely correct in what you say. Jack Walton was excellent. He had a shot from, might have been Aaron Lyle, that he dipped down to tip past the post, which was really good. He had one in the first half as well that he might have been Lyle's one that he pushed onto the post. Really, really excellent piece of goalkeeping, and you can see why he was rated so highly by yourself and Fraser Clark in that goalkeepers podcast that he did a couple of weeks ago. But as for Dundee United, I don't think they played well, but I was trying to put my finger on why, and I was thinking, is it because they know that a draw is, I suppose it doesn't really, the goal difference played a massive factor in there, but when it's all just about like not having to lose and knowing that even if you do lose, you still have a safety net, where it was just kind of like, let's just see how, let's not get beat. And I thought they did fine in terms of limiting Airdrie. Airdrie weren't able really to get in behind them, if you know what I mean. And likewise, Airdrie couldn't really get in behind Dundee United and so on. A lot of it was played out in front of the defence and played out in front of the goalkeeper. But that's probably not the most analysis. It's quite a difficult game to analyse, given the fact that there wasn't all that much at stake. And I'm really beginning to wonder if we've picked the right game here. And I'm going to take the responsibility for that, because it was me that got in touch and said, let's do this one.
But ultimately, the hard work was done for United. So, like, how do they go into that? So, like, I know they needed a point to officially win the league, but they'd won the league. Like the hard work was done, not just a week before, but each of the 34 games leading up to this, the hard work was done. So I suppose two things. A, the suggestion was they hadn't really prepared. I mean, I don't want to, whether they prepared very much, if at all. Certainly they hadn't given it, it hadn't been at the forefront of their minds, I got the impression, in terms of the build up to this game. And I suppose there is a wee bit of, if you're a professional football player, you've had a long, hard season, 9 months, you've achieved what you need to achieve. You have won the league, regardless of whether they'd got a point or even lost this game to Airdrie. And whatever it was, another week, 6 days after this game, summer holidays begins. Like, do you want to potentially, are you going to give it 100% because you potentially might pick up an injury? You've got Ibiza at the middle of June. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe there is, I would imagine, if you're a football player, even subconsciously, there is an element where you say, I don't really want to pick up an injury when I have, for the first time in 9 months, an opportunity to relax for whatever it is, 5 or 6 weeks. So no, I didn't necessarily blame Dundee United or the players or Jim Goodwin for how poor they were. But I mean, I think what has been, if you wanted to talk about how impressed I've been with Dundee United in recent weeks, and whether it's to do with Jim Goodwin changing how he approaches a game, or whether it's been good fortune, like up until this point. So I think Ayr United, he changed things. He brought in David Witherspoon when things weren't looking quite good, or when the game wasn't going according to plan. And that seems like a bit of a departure, because I think there's been a bit of a suggestion that Goodwin maybe doesn't have a plan B, or his substitutions haven't been particularly great. The week before against Ayr, I thought they did. And I think the 3 weeks before that has been maybe the first time this season where they've steamrollered over opponents. So
yeah, it really felt as though, it felt as though that those games towards the end, you actually saw, these guys are the champions for a reason. It was reflected in the scorelines.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And whether that's because, so I remember, see when I was approaching Tannadice for the game that the Raith lost 2-0, and as much as like Dundee United were far and away better on the day, Dabrowski maybe only had 1 or 2 saves other than the goals, but regardless, Raith were very much second best. But when I approached Tannadice that day, I was like, oh, I think it was Ross Graham, and I'm fairly certain that Ross Graham and Sam McClelland were the centre-halves that day. I was like, oh, Raith might have a wee chance here. And I think what Dundee United fans have been very critical is how much football they play like in their own third. And it's like kind of passing for passing's sake. So they'll keep possession, but Walton will play it out, and 10 passes later, they're still only 25 yards for their own goal. And I do wonder if he thought to himself against Raith, right, I've got 2 reasonably inexperienced, untried centre-halves. Therefore, I kind of want them to play it direct a wee bit quicker. And actually, over those 3 or 4 weeks, it very much seemed to work. So that is whether Goodwin deserves credit for that, or whether it's just it was something he thought about because they have 2 experienced centre-halves. Regardless, they've the fact that Raith have run out of puff, well, Dundee United seem to find a second gear, I think has been very impressive, regardless of how well they played against Airdrie, I suppose.
That's what we had said that on the podcast that we did when we covered the match where United beat the Rovers 2-0, and we said they were quite direct in that game. Yep. It didn't look like a fantastic game of football. However, if you have Louis Moult there up front, who's like you say, the best back-to-goal striker in that division, use him. And you saw how well he linked up with Tony Watt for the first goal, then converted a penalty later on. So it makes sense. Don't put possession for possession's sake. Like, I'd much rather just get up to the big man as quickly as possible and push up for there. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I saw with my eyes, in terms of reading, that an interview with Tony Watt where he was asked, do you think that Dundee United can repeat what Dundee have done this season and get a top 6 finish? And his reply was, why not?
I suppose what would be slightly uncomfortable in terms of what alluded to is that Dundee had a massive turnover in the summer. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Dundee United's the kind of contract status is, but I do think that Dundee is a kind of decent template to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go through that squad, I think like Dundee United have done well this season. Like as much as like they haven't had things all their way, at times it's been stodgy. At times we've criticised them. People have criticised them. Their fans. I don't know if Jim Goodwin has a huge amount of credit in the bank. However, when you go through their results this season, they've never lost 2 games in a row. Like the longest sequence without a win has been 2 games, and one of them has always been a draw. So they've been pretty much relentless right through this season. More points than Dundee, more points than Kelly. Kelly struggled when they got back to the top flight, and it's because they had so many players that were still under contract. I don't know if Dundee United are in that same position, but I do think if you go through their entire squad, I think it would be an okay Premiership team, but not one that I would necessarily expect to waltz into the top 6. And I think they would have to supplement it with 3 or 4 genuinely good signings. You can go through the entire team, and almost all of those players have been at the Premiership at one time or another and have been okay and no more than that, and sometimes at points unimpressive. So I wouldn't say that they would be automatically become top 6.
One of the things I was going to say in terms of players in that team who have got top flight experience, one of the players who actually doesn't is Ross Docherty, the captain. I think he's perhaps been one of the best midfielders in the Championship this season. And I think we've said when he doesn't play, United really drop off. Is there not a statistic there saying that they haven't won a game where Ross Docherty hasn't featured in, something like that?
They've won, I think at one point, almost all of the games that they'd lost didn't feature Ross Docherty. So something they have won games without him.
Right, beg your pardon.
But you're right. So players like Docherty and Tony Watt, they have become, and Kevin Holt is a good example as well. Like they've become very, very important players this season, and rightly so. All of them have had good seasons, if not better. But we know that they're probably not great Premiership players, and you don't have to be a great Premiership player for a team to finish top 6. We know they're not necessarily good Premiership players, so that right away would be a concern. I did see a comment on Twitter. It might have been like kind of Saturday or Sunday, and it said there's very little. Once you get out with the top 4 in the top flight, there's very little between 5th and the rest. And I don't see why this Dundee United team wouldn't be there or thereabouts. I'm not so sure about that. I think they would need an injection of quality. Don't get me wrong. I think it's an okay team. I wouldn't expect them to be struggling against relegation. But in terms of being an automatic top 6 team, no, I'm not so sure.
What about a team battling against relegation then? I suppose it's all hypotheticals or these sort of questions, because every team will bring in new players. If you step up a level, you will bring in the players. Your budget, I imagine in most instances, your budget increases, therefore you can sign that better quality that allows you to compete at that level. So I suppose there's no point in discussing what Dundee United are going to do next season. We'll save that for our we'll save that for our big preview podcast. We won't, because we won't be discussing Dundee United at all. Did you know that? Save that for... save that. Why don't, Craig Phil, why don't you get Ali Heather on or something like that and make everyone switch off their podcast when you preview Dundee United's season? Actually, don't platform him. That's don't platform people like that.
Or Jim Spence.
Jim Spencer. He just... every time I hear Jim Spence, the first thing that comes into my head is just... it feels like every time I see that little MF pop up in my feed, it's like I can smell his hair. Like just it sort of smells like cats and straw at the same time. That's I imagine. That's what Jim Spence's hair smells like.
Mouth organs. Yeah.
Oh, I hate to think what his mouth organ smells like. Save that for another. That's a discussion. That's a discussion for another time. But Airdrie, as you say, really embarrassing result against Partick Thistle, because I think that was seen as like a dress rehearsal almost for the playoff quarterfinals. But to bounce back with this, and as we say, they forced Jack Walton into some really, really good saves. On another day they could have beaten. How do you fancy them to go into this game against? Obviously they've got a game at the weekend against Queen's Park. Big game for Queen's Park, not so much for Airdrie, although I do fancy Airdrie to to win at the weekend. But yeah, we'll preview the playoffs against Thistle. How do you see them doing against them?
I genuinely think it could be for either of the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. I think if any of those teams play well, I know that seems like quite an easy thing. If any of them play well, but if Airdrie have an off day, if they play like they did against Partick Thistle, or if they play like they did against Ayr United recently, or Arbroath when they got absolutely bodied, then Partick Thistle will win that game. But if they, like, Airdrie are just a really, really difficult team to play against, because if you, Jim, like there's been examples especially in the Championship in the past, where a team is known as playing a nice style of football, playing football in the right way, and Airdrie got a lot of credit for that. But the thing is as well, if you want to like compare them to Raith Rovers under John McGlynn, for example, as a good example, and see if you just press them and don't give them any space whatsoever, there was no plan B. And that Rovers team under McGlynn would just really struggle. But see under McCabe, see if you want to press them, they're pretty good at going direct as well.
Yeah.
So like if they put Todorov up front, for example, he can do a job if you want to go direct. They've got players that are good enough, excellent footballers if you want to play through the middle. If you give them time in the middle of the park, they'll pick you apart. If they can play the ball out wide, they've got players in wide areas. They've got fullbacks that can get forward, so they can get good deliveries into the area as well. So it's like they probably have like a plan A, B, and C, and that makes them such a difficult opponent. I wouldn't be surprised if they are the Championship side that represents a second tier against whoever finishes 11th. If you were asking me to give you an opinion, I would still, despite that evisceration by Partick Thistle, I'd probably still say Airdrie.
It was the first time at on Friday night that I'd got the chance to see Kanayo Megwa, because I'd heard really good things, and I saw him like in highlights and seen him clips. This guy's excellent. Yeah. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I know he's had a big pop off, like a lot of people like yourself as well, Fraser Clark, like speak very highly of him. But to see him like in action, you can understand why folk are really excited about him. And I think that if you're Hibernian, you'd have really high hopes for him. And it'll be interesting to see what they do next with him. I know that when he went back to Hibs very briefly in January, I think he struggled a little bit, but he perhaps got to the excuse that you're going into a team that aren't playing well, you're a young guy, and it's a position where if you get exposed in, you can have a bit of a stinker. But hopefully it's in a position now where they can assess him over the summer, either loan him out, maybe to a team in the Premiership, maybe to Dundee United, perhaps, someone like that, or give him a run, because he looks really good. He looks like he's got all the stuff that you want. He's fast and skillful and strong, can run up and down all day. I really liked him. And I really like to look at Aaron Lyle as well.
Yep.
First time I'd seen him, and I thought he was really good presence in sort of that central attacking position. And so, as we mentioned there, forced Jack Walton a couple of good saves. So yeah, liked what I saw from Airdrie. And said it before, like I think Rhys McCabe's getting a lot of pop, but it's you've kind of summed up why he's getting a lot of pop. Like a clever guy, he seems to know the game well. And on top of that, it's a really good story. It's a really good story. And there are the factors there that young guy, player manager, like centre back as well. It's not really his position. And I think that people won't like you saying this, but the fact that he's association with Rangers, that kind of makes him more attractive and more interesting to talk about in a way.
Yeah, potentially. It'd be interesting. Like, I kind of alluded to this, but like he has a really, really young team at Airdrie, and I would imagine that is, I'm guessing that's entirely down to budget, because younger players are cheaper. But he is obviously a very, very young manager as it is, doesn't have a huge amount of experience, and it would be fascinating to see him maybe move on to a side that has a more varied age range and how much they buy into how he explains his tactics, or kind of buys into his approach.
I
I
remember,
think it would be very interesting.
But I remember looking at the Airdrie squad. I think it's from the top range to the bottom range. There's quite a large gap. There are a lot of variations in ages. But the first team, if you were to look at Airdrie's best 11, most of the guys in there are sort of in their mid to late 20s. So guys that have been about a bit.
Are they?
You think about it, like Craig Watson, Cammy Ballantyne, Adam Frizzell, Nikolai Todorov.
I thought that was it. Like Fordyce is his cousin, so I'd imagine he'll listen to him and respect him. And I thought Todorov was one of their elder players at 27. I thought they had a very, very young squad.
I'm not going to check Transfermarkt because I hate it listening to podcasts where somebody makes a point. It's like, oh, we'll go and check that just now. If you're an Airdrie fan, get in touch with myself and Sean and let us know either way. But there's two more points about this game, Sean, because we've been talking about this for 20 minutes. I was a bit worried at the begin with it because that fuck all happened. The two things, and it's actually this is actually before the game and after the game. Before the game, Airdrie held a guard of honour for Dundee United, and you only really do that if the teams are champions. Mm-hmm. Dundee United at this point weren't the champions, they were the de facto champions, given the fact they had a far superior goal difference to Raith Rovers, but they weren't officially the champions. What did you make of Airdrie giving them the guard of honour?
I mean, I thought it was unusual, not something I have heard of before. I laughed at Raith Rovers' football friends or whatever they put out, but by the same token, like they were the champions. So do you know something that was absolutely fair enough. I didn't really have an issue with it.
Imagine they lost that match and the Rovers had beaten Morton 15-0. Airdrie would have looked very silly going into the final game of the season.
Yes, imagine, but I didn't really have much hope of that, and it didn't pan out that way either.
What's the most goals you've ever seen Raith Rovers score in a game?
Oh, 6 maybe.
6.
That's not enough, really.
You cut out there, Sean, but I'm going to assume it was a very interesting story. I think I saw Stennismuir score 10 in one game.
Oh, did you?
It was a friendly.
Oh, that doesn't count.
Yeah, I think then 7 is the most I've seen.
Like 6. 6 is the most I've seen.
6. You said 6, and then he just go, and then I thought, hopefully he keeps on speaking, and then you'll come in with a bit of audio. Then I just say, at the most I've seen from Stennismuir to try and make it seamless. Riverside's not that good, honestly. Riverside's not that good. Riverside, for those people listening, it's not where Craig Fowler lives. It's a fancy recording platform, but it seems to cut out along, which is really annoying. And Sean, that was we're talking about happened before the game with that lame ass guard of honour. What about afterwards with a lame ass pitch invasion?
Also strange. So like, see when I've ran on a pitch before at the League Cup semi-finals when Raith Rovers beat Airdrie. Funnily enough, I didn't think to myself, I'm going to bam up Airdrie fans. I don't know. I don't know if when you ran on the park when Steny won the league, if you thought it didn't look like it, you thought I'm going to bam up East Fife fan.
Well, part of me wanted to slap Jack Healy across the back of the head for being cheeky, but then by that point, he was off. When I sort of came to, he was off the pitch and probably way up the road, so I didn't get the chance to do that.
But no, it felt unnecessary. They felt very much like, see the first one. So when they'd ultimately won the league against United, I had a sense of relief, a sense of fact you've won the league. Invade the park, fine. This one was obviously, like most pitch invasions are probably pre-planned, so I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it felt a bit more manufactured. I don't know how to describe it. It was certainly more unnecessary than the one from the previous week.
Was there not a video of a guy sort of like licking or sucking up an inflatable trophy?
Yes, that was weird. Not as weird as the guy sucking his son's ear behind Stephen Henry, but odd nonetheless.
Do you remember the video of Paul Scholes biting his daughter's toenails? No one ever talks about that enough. I thought that was absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. But yet he's still allowed to walk amongst us.
That was weird.
There's our next thing. I'll need to check up what his daughter's name is, but when the Paul Scholes and Prunella Scholes of the terrace get together, I'm going to bite Sean's toenails and then we're going to talk about some lower league football.
Aye, vile. Absolutely vile now. Aye. It's horrible that you've put that vision in my head.
But he was proper getting into it as well, wasn't he? Like his eyes closed and he was like, ah.
Like he seemed to be like enjoying it. I think I'm sure I once read an interview with him, and he kind of justified it by saying that he'd essentially done that since she was a young girl.
Oh, all right. So I didn't realise. We're sorry, Paul.
But she's now like 20 or something.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like people that have baths with their brothers and sisters, like into adulthood. Not saying that I know anyone that does that. Just saying that's all we used to do this when we were younger, right? Well, you're not younger anymore. Dearie me. Right, Sean, let's take a walk into League One and we'll head to Galabank, where Annan Athletic probably recorded one of the most surprising results of the weekend by coming from 2 goals down to draw 3 each with Falkirk. Liam Henderson opened the scoring for the Bairns, but Willie Gibson equalised from the spot late on in the first half. Henderson got the second and injured himself in the celebrations. Nisbet got a third for Falkirk, but Gibson pulled one back again from the penalty spot before Aidan Smith scored at the death. Now, weirdly, Annan have taken the most points off of Falkirk out of anyone this season. 2. Well done. Falkirk are still flying high at the top of the table. They are unbeaten and they'll be presented with the league title at Alloa Athletic on Saturday. But Annan, they are out of the relegation playoff place. They have occupied 9th place since October, but they are terrific recent form. Actually, promotion form, really, since the turn of the year. That's seen them leapfrog Stirling Albion, albeit on goal difference. I thought this looked like it's a shame there wasn't more at stake here. I mean, if Falkirk have got their unbeaten streak, that's going to be a massive source of pride for them. And I think the fact they've come away out of this one with a draw, you'd be astonished if they lost it against Alloa. But it's just a shame that this was sort of effectively, there wasn't much at stake for Falkirk here, because if there had been, I think this would have been an even better game than what it was.
Aye. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how, as well as Annan done, and I thought like they did play well, that Falkirk could have had this wrapped up.
Yes.
Certainly by half-time. And even in the second half, they had chances. Not that Greg Fleming and the Annan goal was necessarily having to make like 3 or 4 really good saves, but certainly Falkirk were profligate in front of the goal. Yeah. Had 2 or 3 really good chances in the first 5 minutes. I think they were ahead.
That header that Ross McKeever put over the bar early doors.
Yeah, and then I think they were ahead after about 11 minutes from a set piece that Calvin Miller put in, and then Henderson finished from close range. But you have to give credit to Annan. They have hung on in there. I know there was it, I don't know who it was on Pine Bovril, a Falkirk fan, that suggested that the SFA will stop at nothing to try and prevent Falkirk going the season unbeaten, which seems, I'm not entirely sure why. To what end would the SFA try and stop Falkirk going 36 league games unbeaten? What's in it for them?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The only people that really care about Falkirk going unbeaten are presumably Falkirk fans.
I would be more surprised if every single SFA employee knew that Falkirk were unbeaten.
Yeah.
Never mind involved in some kind of weird conspiracy to stop them in their tracks. And in fact, like when you think about it, and I would imagine that between both of us, we have watched, so whether it's like preparing for this podcast or preparing for the TV show, or just the fact that we're a couple of quite sad individuals, we have probably watched all of the lower league highlights packages between us this season. There'll be very, very few that have slipped through the net. And off the top of my head, in terms of refereeing decisions that I've genuinely went, fucking hell, it was one that went in Falkirk's decision at Edinburgh City.
Oh, the penalty?
A penalty, yeah. I mean, it wasn't a foul, and it was about 3 yards outside the box. So in terms of this conspiracy, I cannot possibly buy into it.
What we need, Sean, is we need to bring back the referee from the match where Falkirk played against Clyde, when Tom Lang, who was a Clyde player at the time, smashed into the back of a Falkirk player. Nothing was given. Play continued, and Clyde won a penalty. That's the kind of refereeing we need to reintroduce back into the lower leagues, because if Falkirk keep winning, it's not going to be as much fun anymore. We'll say that.
But I did think that obviously Annan, don't get me wrong, I think if it wasn't for the 2 penalties, they wouldn't have got a way back into the game. Such was Falkirk's dominance. But I thought both were penalties.
Oh, 100%.
The first one, was
Bislin pushes him over.
He's 2 hands on him. Bislin was 2 hands on. He'd lost it. I mean, it was a decent delivery in the area. Leighton Bislin had lost Aidan Smith, a 2-handed shove. I mean, Smith was getting to it, and he obviously panicked But then that second one, so at this point, Falkirk were 3-1 up. That second one, it was
Finn Yates.
Finn Yates, and like, I saw a suggestion, but the ball was away. Like it was still, I mean, it still looked like he caught him on the shin. Probably unnecessarily. Maybe he was trying to block the shot. I don't know what he was trying to do, but it was a kind of straight leg challenge. It looked like it went into Smith's shin, and so again, I thought both penalties were the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I was a Falkirk fan. What I might have been a bit annoyed at, but again, there's a lot to do between that point and the goal and the penalty decision. I thought Tommy Goss went down a wee bit easy in terms of the free kick and the build up to the first goal. But regardless, like there were 24 decisions like that in a game on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But no, on another day, Falkirk would have won that quite handsomely.
But I suppose it shows a lot of Annan's kind of never say die attitude, and I think I would need to go and check. And I forgive me, I've not done it, but the number of points that Annan have dug out from losing positions. If you remember early in the season, they beat Hamilton Accies. He scored in the 90th minute. Josh Walker scored a really good goal. And this one, to take a point from it, I mean, you would think that for most teams, you're 2 down against comfortably the best side in division. You might just be like, right, let's just get this game over and done with. But to come back into it and show that determination and keep on going, I thought then that's really impressive. And it feels like at Annan, and it's easy because you're winning, but everyone really seems to be enjoying themselves. But I think when you watch the highlights back, I think there was one of my favourite bits, and it was perhaps a bit embarrassing more than anything else, but it was right at the very end, like for Aidan Smith's goal, Josh Galloway sets up. He tries to, he clips the ball in to the sort of like into the D just outside the box. And Bisland didn't look like he had a very good game.
Didn't have a good game, no.
But Bisland sort of misjudges the ball and it just goes past him to Aidan Smith to finish. Galloway celebrates by turning to the this is really funny, but Galloway turns open arms to the stand. And I think he's waiting for other players to come round him, but he doesn't. He just sort of looks behind him and sees everyone else is running off and has to run and join them. So really bad, but I have so much respect for what Peter Murphy's doing at Annan, and I know that the season you've got to take it as a whole, but if they had just had shown this kind of form at the beginning of the season, like we say, Annan would be promotion contenders. They'd be up there with Cove Rangers and Montrose and vying for that final playoff spot because they just look really good, and so many people, ourselves included, will have written them off. As soon as they came up and you saw the team and there hasn't been that many players that have come in for it, it'd be like their favourites to come down between them and Edinburgh. And the fact that they have they're at this stage of the season and they're playing Stirling Albion, that's going to be the biggest match in the country at the weekend, this match against Stirling Albion. And as long as they don't lose, simple as that, Stirling Albion need to win. As long as they don't lose, they're getting another crack in League One next season. I think that's fantastic.
Incredible. And I'm fairly certain at one point there were 12 points behind Stirling Albion.
As many as that?
Now, because, obviously, we've raved about Annan and their end to the season. I suppose at the start of the season, we'd not necessarily said similar things about Stirling Albion, but their start to the season was very, very impressive. Right for the word go in terms of that kind of League Cup group. And as much as that ultimately fizzled out, maybe before even the end of the first quarter of the campaign, I would have to go back and check. But at one point, I thought Stirling Albion would be fine. I didn't think that they would get dragged in. However, ultimately, Annan have been so good and Albion have kind of tailed off. But I suppose, I would like Annan to stay up, but it would be, I think in terms of the mindset, they have always been, they've been chasing now for a good few months. And now it's how do they approach this game? Because a draw does them, but I think they probably have maybe a slightly better team, or maybe they have more game winners in their team than Stirling Albion.
So, yeah,
do.
I think that's a better way to describe it. Yeah,
and they have momentum, but I still think the fact that Stirling Albion at home, the fact that I still think it could potentially be a toss of a coin. You're right. I think it is the biggest game in the country this weekend.
I don't. I fancy Annan for it. Annan have beaten Stirling Albion twice already this season, and Annan have picked up 7 points against Stirling Albion this season. Stirling Albion have only taken the one from them. It's hard to have not watched that many Stirling Albion highlights, but it felt as though when they went up and they didn't make that many changes. And it's strange because you'd actually, them and Annan are good comparisons just in terms of like Stirling Albion. Like, they both came up from League Two. Stirling finished miles ahead of them at the finish up. Stirling had a great season last season, but they come up and there's not that much surgery done to the team. I think the only players that came in, like Lewis Milne, it was the only sort of notable players coming. Josh McPate's coming latterly. But I always looked at that defence and I thought, that to me is a League Two defence that you've got there. Guys like Jordan McGregor, Adam Cummins, Ross McGeechy, all good stoppers. But I always thought if you could run at them and like pull them and isolate them, you could cause them bother. And I don't know if that's been the case here. And then like I'd have said the same about Stephen Swinglehurst, and he's been fine. Like maybe it's having somebody a bit more mobile like Matty Douglas alongside him, the three at the back that Anna have been playing, having someone that's so good on the ball like Willie Gibson playing in front of them, where you do not need to think about what you're doing in possession, because all you do is just give the ball straight to Willie Gibson and it makes your job so much easier. I don't know if that's if those are factors in it, but there just seems to be a bit of a stench about Forth Bank for a while now. And I just think that it's two clubs in completely contrasting mindsets to it. And that's why I think that Annan are going to win this. Not just the fact that Annan are in good form, not just the fact that Annan have been better than them for the best part of the season. I just think that there's just a good degree of contrast there.
No, you're right. I very much feel that Annan are very much on the up, and Stirling Albion are going the other way. So I do expect Annan to stay in the division. That'd be an incredible achievement. The only other thing I wanted to touch on in terms of the Falkirk highlights, that there was in fact two things actually. So I don't know who the co-commentator was.
Cole Donaldson.
Was that who it was? I thought he said Andy at one point. Was it Cole Donaldson?
Cole Donaldson.
So he said something quite interesting in terms of when the players were coming out and there was the guard of honour, and he said that if you catch the eye of somebody when they're clapping you on, it's quite awkward, which I thought was quite interesting. And he also said that when Henderson went off, when Liam Henderson went off an injury, he went, and obviously our hearts go out to Hendo. But it made it sound like his family was like trapped in a cable car or something. It was just a strange, like he's just hurt his hamstring. He'll be fine.
There was something that just reminded me. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a video. It's a post-match interview with John Terry and Frank Lampard, and they're talking about I think there was a shooting at a school in Belgium. And they say, like, obviously we're thinking about everyone at this really difficult time, and that just reminded me of that there. One of the things about the commentators, I'm glad that you picked up on it. It's obviously Sean Eldebrand is normally the Falkirk TV commentator. Sean would have been at this game, but Sean works for the SPFL. He was at Oco View. I was working with him. We'll come on and talk about it shortly. And I thought, well, if Sean's not going to be there, they might just let Lewis Connolly and the other weird fella, they might just give them one last rodeo for the season. So when I heard a young person that looked as though they'd done their research, I was very disappointed with this one. Yeah, it's not very interesting when you get a player in there, because like they're not going to be critical about their mates. And I think they sometimes just tend to talk in cliches. Like that's why you see our hearts go out to him. I mean, the guy just like hurt his leg, like running after scoring a goal. I mean, he's not... It's not exactly like Henrik Larsson against Leon, or anything like that. But aye, that was interesting to see that. That's it. So our hearts are going out to Liam Henderson just now.
I hope he's okay.
But Falkirk, they are playing Alloa Athletic at the Falkirk Stadium on Saturday. They're winning the title that day. How would you... In fact, two questions. One, do you expect them to go unbeaten this season? Do you reckon Alloa can take something for this game? And how would you sum up Falkirk's season?
So Falkirk's season has been... I would imagine that even if you've been a Falkirk supporter for decades, I would imagine this has been one of your favourite seasons of all time. Yeah. Not just, it's League One. But regardless of that, the fact that I think they will avoid defeat against Alloa. I think Alloa, the fact that they will presumably rotate their squad because they've got a massive playoff game coming up. So I think in terms of squad rotation, Alloa will. Falkirk, I probably don't have that many players to rotate. Maybe Alloa could take advantage of the fact that they will presumably have a very young back four again. Don't think that'll be the case. I think Falkirk will avoid defeat. But in terms of if you're a Falkirk fan, this, I presume, will be one of your favourite seasons of all time. And similar to what we said about Dunfermline last year, that kind of rapport between club and fan, it was maybe slightly easier with Dunfermline because it was just 1 year in League One. Falkirk have obviously had 5 years now, but it feels like that, if there was any issues between club and supporter, it feels like those are now absolutely alleviated, and I would imagine they will be quietly confident about how they'll do next season.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right there. You know, for said it a number of times, but for 5 long years, we did it when they won the league, having gone through the dishonourable list of underachievement during those 5 years. And to have done it there, and they play when the Falkirk are good, you know, I think they might be one of the best teams to watch in the country. Mm-hmm. Just that front four they've got with like Henderson and Spencer behind them, they're just all comfortable on the ball. Everyone wants to be in the ball. Use the expression, used it earlier. Guys seem to be enjoying their football there. The new board coming in, investment into the club, good players that are signed on like reasonably long-term deals going into next term. 100%, you'd think this has been a really, really good season for them. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. If things have been shit, if you can just like put them to bed and just like Falkirk are a big club, and they have shown this season that they're a big club. And it just shows like there's no nonsense in the pitch, you actually get some like decent players for you rather than Paul Hartley's mate's scrapbook, then you can actually put together a competitive side that can give fans something to cheer about and make people want to turn up on a Saturday. And I've no doubt I think there'll be hardly any Alloa fans for this. I think this could get 3 stands full of Falkirk supporters here. There'll be so many people that want to turn out to see this.
And I think what does bode well going forward is that Falkirk currently have a side, and I would imagine that John McGlynn will build on this. I alluded to it earlier in the fact that it was always felt at Raith they had one style of play. Decent football, play it through the middle, didn't really play with width, didn't go direct, and if it did, it didn't really work. Or it would be move a centre half up front and go direct. But they could play great football, so they've got Dylan Tate. I think they'll try and get him back in the summer. They've got Brad Spencer who can go take it off a centre half and play it forward. But on either side, they have Calvin Miller and Callum Morrison. I think getting Morrison to extend his contract was absolutely key.
Yeah.
I think up front, which you never really had at Stars Park, I would say, is Ross McKeever. Interesting to see how he does next season. But the fact that he can win headers, hold the ball up, is comfortable kind of knitting together all of the players, like receiving the ball and then kind of knitting together an attack with the players that are round about him.
Yeah.
I think that bodes well, because there isn't, again, McGlynn, maybe more than any other time under his career, has a couple of plans under his 2 hats. No, I've been really impressed by him.
I'd be interested to see what they do. And obviously there's still the playoffs to go through. I can see them having a very successful season next season.
I thought that about Dunfermline, to be fair, coming into this season. But yes, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised, because generally teams that win League One, generally do pretty well the next season. So I wouldn't be surprised.
It'd be interesting to see how James McPake would have got on if he was able to field. He didn't have so many injuries that he had this season.
Yeah, that's true. I'm still not entirely sure about him, and I'm not entirely sure that Dunfermline fans are sure about him either. So it'll be interesting to see how Dunfermline got on next season. They have a rebuild, I feel, this summer.
Excellent. And in a summer, that's a team we definitely will be previewing when we do our big podcast. Yes, we will. Unless something remarkable happens and they somehow get promoted.
I don't see how that would happen, but you never know. Listen, you never know.
A King Ralph situation in the Scottish Premiership. Do you reckon any of the people who are listening to this know what King Ralph is?
No, but they might Google it.
Yeah,
let's face it. The people that listen to this podcast have got time on their hands. They'll Google King. They'll Google. They will pause the wrestling and they will Google King Ralph.
They will get their cock out their hand and pick up their phone and lazily type King Ralph in.
League Two.
I'm not saying that they're jerking it or anything like that. I'm just saying they'll probably just have their hand down their trousers.
All right, okay, like Al Bundy in Married with Children. He always had his hand down his trousers.
Really? Right? There's a reference. Married with Children.
Yeah, late 80s. Probably like you wouldn't you listen. It was if you were slightly older, you would love it. You genuinely would love it.
Do you remember that sitcom? Or I think the sitcom was Dinosaurs. It was basically like The Simpsons, but it was dinosaurs.
Yeah, that was basically Married with Children, but replaced with I don't know, Diplodocuses.
Imagine pitching that to the executives. Be like, listen, we're just going to remake Married with Children. We don't need to spend all this money on costumes. I imagine the markup for the costumes would have been extraordinary. We're just going to have live actors.
Just have another series of Married with Children.
Yeah, it's fine. Just get Al Bundy just to keep his hands out of his trousers. Maybe. Well, let's talk about League Two. And this is probably the final time we're getting the opportunity to talk about the greatest team on the planet. We have spoken about two teams that are going to be presented with trophies this weekend. Let's talk about a team who were presented with a trophy last weekend, and that is Stenhousemuir FC, who ended a barren 140 years and raised that first championship in their history. They drew 1-1 with Bonnyrigg Rose. Gregor Buchanan opened the scoring towards the end of the first half of the header, but it was cancelled out by Bradley Barrett, who scored with a tap-in late on in the second. Stenny are continuing to break all sorts of records this season. 8 consecutive draws. An 8th consecutive draw. That is a brand new Scottish football record. But meanwhile, that point was enough to virtually guarantee Bonnyrig's SPFL safety. They're 3 points ahead of Stranraer in League Two, but they've got a far superior goal difference. And given the fact that Stranraer don't score goals, it's very, very unlikely they're going to be able to chip away at it. But I mentioned at the start of the show, Sean, when we did that big podcast, I thought that winning the title was the best day of my life. I was wrong. This was the best day of my life.
So what I would say is I didn't go to Capello at the weekend just because essentially it was a kind of nothing game. So I kind of had to live vicariously in terms of getting my football fix through the stuff that you were doing for the SPFL online. Now, it looked class, but why was this week better than the week before?
It's a funny one. I was trying to think that myself. Why was last week better than the other one? And I suppose that when you run onto the pitch, when you've got it there, when the win is confirmed, you become mindless. You know, you run onto the pitch, you lose your senses. I think I said that to you. You have got so much energy fizzing through your body that all you want to do is touch people who have got the same sort of energy. And it just creates this gyre of magical vibrancy. And it's absolutely incredible. And I suppose that you a fairly unremarkable couple of weeks after that, you drew against Elgin, you drew with Clyde, they coming into this game against Bonnyrigg. But I think what made it so good was the fact that I was working with the SPFL, so I got effectively go behind the scenes and I got to speak to some of the players on the pitch before and after the game. Got to work with Sean Eldebrandt, which was brilliant fun, and I'm so grateful to Scott McClyman at the SPFL for asking if I wanted to do it. I originally actually turned it down when he said, do you want to come behind the scenes for Trophy Day? I remember thinking, I don't know, I just want to celebrate it as a fan. But there was a lot of opportunity to do that afterwards. And just to be able to get so close to the trophy, so close to the players, it was just, and so close to the players' families as well, that made it so special. And that was just the stuff like on the pitch at Ochil View. The stuff that happened afterwards was just so good. And the fact that you could just go in there and just enjoy yourself, just like properly just give into it and just enjoy yourself and open up your heart, and just everyone in the one place in the plough, and then subsequently back at Ochil View afterwards, it was just an amazing day. And I remember thinking, this is really good, but I've already said that was the best day of my life. But no, this is that topped it. Trophy day topped it.
So in terms of people who didn't catch the SPFL socials, but I'm sure everybody who's listening absolutely did. But just in case you didn't, who did you interview? And just out of interest, why did you pick them? Like, did you pick them because you thought they would be very good on camera, or just because they're your favourite players?
These were the guys that I thought had interesting stories to tell. So the first one we spoke to was Donald Smiley, who, if anyone watched The View from the Terrace, the feature they did about Steny winning the league, Donald Smiley's the guy who's just turned 90, been following the Warriors for more than 60 years, put in so much of his heart and soul, and he put his hand into his pocket as well, with little in return. But finally, he had his moment. So we got to speak to him in the wee bar. But that was actually one of my favourite things about the day. He presented Gregor Buchanan with a trophy at the end, which was amazing. It was amazing. So then you had Buchanan, obviously the captain. You had Ross Meekin, who is perhaps the most successful player in Stenosphere's history, being promoted with them, and he's won the league with them. So he's one of them. Ewan O'Reilly, just a guy who I think the fans really, really like and really take to. And then there's big Nicky Jamieson. We spoke to him on the pitch. And just because Nicky's a great big guy who the fans have really got an affinity for. And then Gary Naismith as well at the just before the game as well. So that's why we selected those players. It's just basically a case of who's available and just kind of grab them.
And how did you find it in terms of like was there any point of it was like, oh, I really wish I was just able to enjoy this in the standard? Was there? Or did it give you, I suppose, a behind the scenes that you were never going to get otherwise?
I think you would never have got that otherwise, but I was able to enjoy it in the stands. Effectively, we'd filmed all this video content and Sean needed to go away and edit it. So I went into the wee bar for about back at 2 and was able to just sit in the wee bar and sort of take it all in and sing the songs and just hug people and just talk about how great this is going to be. And then was able to go into the stand and was in the stand for the entire first half. I think, did I see Sean? I saw Sean at half time. Then I missed Bradley Barrett's goal because we were down. This is actually one of my favourite things of the day as well. We were down in the wee bar. The trophy had been kept in a separate room because it was like a cupboard, so they didn't want to bring it into the wee bar when fans were there. But we brought it into the wee bar and we're doing some video work with it. And then I said, this is where Greg Buchanan is going to hand us. This is what we've all been waiting for. You come round and he filmed and you got the stuff there. But I remember back when we lost to Peterhead, there was this fan podcast, the Blue Toon podcast. They had said, I had never interacted with this mob before, but they got in touch with me and they basically sent a gift that said the word unlucky along it.
Yep.
And I thought, Sean, can you take a picture of me with this trophy? So holding the trophy and smiling, waited to the end of the match, just say, what you say now, Specky? And I checked, and both the guys that present the podcast wear glasses. But I'm not letting you get away with that one. But then it was out onto the pitch after full time when they were assembling the plinth for the players all to go on to, and doing the bit where it says, and this is the moment we've been waiting for, and then he spun round and Buchanan lifts it. So being on the pitch, seeing the confetti cannons, just being so close to it, you would not have got that otherwise. And that's why I'm so grateful for them to do that, to be as close to it as that, and to be able to talk to the players. And it's not just the players. That's what made it so. It's not just the players. It's the fact that you feel like at the club, the players are really sound. So are their families as well. And seeing guys like Gregor Buchanan's dad, Gordon, who actually coached the Warriors in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think he was in Terry Christie's coaching staff. He was up, remember when we won the league, he was saying he was up in the boardroom and he was saying, last time I was up here was when they sacked me, which was quite nice. And then there's guys like Nicky Jamieson's dad, Davey, and Davey might be listening to this podcast. Davey was in the crowd when View for the Terrace was in Greenock. Smashing guy. Always liked to chat to him before the football, and it was great seeing them there with their families and seeing the stuff on Instagram afterwards of the players being able to get in the pitch with their medals, with their trophies, with their families. Ross Meekin, his wee girl, went to see him for the first time. I think she's 1 or 2. She was in there. She got to wear the medals. Ewan O'Reilly's Manda, just brilliant, just absolutely brilliant, and getting to share that with them, so good, man, so good. But if that was good, then the plough afterwards. That's when they had the award ceremony. The players got handed their medals, and it's just you're there, just I would have hated to have been a player there because you were getting your lug chewed off all night. All night. Just remember like talking to like Nicky Jameson and James Berry for ages, and just absolutely prattle all of them. Speaking to Kyle Jacobs about what it was like to play at Edinburgh, what Michael McIndoe was like to work with, and I really wish I could remember what he said because I'm sure it was really, really interesting. Talking to the manager as well. The manager actually said a couple of players that he's in for next season. I remember being like, "Oh, that's class." I can't quite remember who they are, but then like I can't remember. So late on, you'd had a lot to drink by this point. Your mind kind of fragments, and I'm sure that some of the players had a night out booked in Glasgow, and a lot of them were getting the last train to go through to Glasgow. But at one point, I think it might have been the chairman, might have been the chief executive, David Alexander. They were like, "Right, let's go back to Oakville View. Let's go back to Oakville View." So about like 12 at night, they opened up the wee bar again. So there was a couple of players like Ewan O'Reilly, Matty Aitken, Adam Brown were back there. The trophy was there as well. And there's a great photo. This is all still posted on our group chat. There's folk taking photos of each other in the wee bar. And in the background, you can see Matty Aitken up at a pint tap with a League Two title, filling it with lager. And it was getting so this League Two trophy is getting passed around, and everyone, like a big daft quake, everyone's drinking at it. Apparently about 1 a.m, the chairman went and put the floodlights on so folk could go out onto the pitch and have a kick about it. just fucking ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There's a video of folk singing Dignity by Deacon Blue. I know I was doing it because the video shows that I was there. Somebody brought pizzas. And just the last thing I remember was just like, I think it must have been about 3 a.m, just like Matty Aitken sort of shoving the trophy and drinking a Bacardi Breezer out it. And then just like waking up in my mum's spare room again. It was amazing. So much fun. You'll never. It's the sort of stuff like you said last week. What looked so good was the fact that you were so close to the players. And I mean, if the players hadn't been there, it'd have still been class. But the fact that these are the guys that you've been cheering on every week, and it's at the stage with this group of players, man. I know they're not, but it feels like you're watching your mates playing, because I feel that's the bond that this group have created, and the what's the word I'm looking for? Just that, so proud that they're representing you out there, and it's so good. And the fact that they make time, like they could have, like you say, that they could have, all of them could easily fucked off to Glasgow afterwards, but the fact that they came back and were just having a laugh, it was so much fun, man. So much fun.
And I suppose from a kind of personal perspective for you, like, see, in terms of the fact that it's happened, like, imagine if this had happened 10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Still would have been amazing. Still would have been absolutely amazing. But the fact that it's kind of coming at the same time as all the stuff that you do for A View for Terrace, or what you've done for SPFL or whatever, it's kind of giving you this unique perspective and like a peek behind the curtain of what's been going on. Definitely, that must make it even more special.
Definitely. It's like it's good to know. I remember the kit man Reese had said when I saw him at the Clyde game. This was after the VT with Donald had gone out. The players had watched it, and the players, apparently there are some players that watch it quite regularly. They had said that they were really happy with it, and they thought it did the club justice. The big podcast that we had, I think that there were some people that had listened back to that as well. I mean, and not to say that I wouldn't want it to be arrogant enough to say like I'm the voice of Stennismuir, but probably one of the most prominent people. And the fact that you do have a platform, like the fact that we were able to record like a 52-minute podcast just talking just about one day, it's amazing. And it's great, man. It's great. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And just like, getting that, not that you're doing it for the recognition or that, but it's just that the fact that you sitting around talking about your mates, that people take an interest in it, that's pretty cool, man. That is pretty cool. It was an amazing day. And like, when I left my mum's, I stayed over at mum's, had breakfast, had a coffee, and my car was parked at the primary school. So if you know your geography in Stennismuir, like, I'm going to say, if you know where my mum stays, I'm hoping no one knows where my mum stays, but she stays like round the back of the golf course. So Stennismuir, you've got the golf course, the cricket club, and the football club. It's quite unique that you've got these three sporting arenas all so close to each other. So I went round the back of mum's house, down into the golf course, and like, see, like, happiness happiness, being happy isn't something that I feel very often. Like, because I always worry about something. I always think like if you're feeling good about something bad's just around the corner. Do genuinely feel like that. And when it comes to like relationships and so on, don't get too carried away because something bad's going to happen. And like that, like with your football team for a long time, and you might be the same, Sean, but when you support a kind of like the older you get, and the fact that your football team, you're not Rangers or Celtic, you kind of, the good times are good, but when the bad times, you stop like indexing your feelings to the performance of your football team. But this season, just I have been doing that, and they've given us nothing to be upset about, because similar to Airdrie or similar to Dundee United, even anytime they've lost, they just bounce back with a win.
Yep.
And I was walking down through the golf course. I was walking down towards the primary school, which is just a stone's throw from the ground. And when I walked to the ground, I was seeing the floodlights, listening to my headphones. A song by the Blue Nile came on called Body and Soul. And it's all just about like sort of like middle-aged contentment and being happy with what you've got. And I just remember like that coming on and just being like, fucking, this is amazing. This is amazing. It will never be as good as this. And that's just like that. It'll never be as good as this. So just be grateful for what you've got. And just walking past the floodlights, listening to this song. It was a nice day. You know, you've still got a buzz on. You've had a coffee, so you've kind of got a bit of bounce about you. And just being like, this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. So it was really nice. And I know I don't want to basically turn this into the Big Stenny Podcast 2.0, but it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So proud of the group of players, so proud of their families, so proud of the supporters as well, because everyone had a great time there. And the club really went out their way to make me and everyone else feel part of this incredible celebration. So just brilliant stuff, man. Absolutely brilliant.
To be able to experience a club's greatest season of all time from such a unique perspective must be, as you say, absolutely amazing. We have, I suppose, but before we finish, we haven't really discussed Bonnyrigg.
No, I was going to say Bonnyrigg. That is the best I think I've seen them since they came into the SPFL. So that's at the end of this 2 years. This is the best they've looked. I think it was Amy Canavan might have been talking about, she might have mentioned a view for the terrace, she might have said it elsewhere, but she thinks Bonnyrigg are at their best when they actually just like take the ball and pass it, but because of the surface at New Dundas Park, and maybe it's Robbie Horn's instructions, it would just get the ball at the park as quickly as possible and take it from there. But they actually played well here. And I think that if Callum Elliott has got the resource to bring his own players in, maybe turns over some players, signs a striker, because that's something we badly need. It's certainly not Smart or Sadola who's got it. But I think there is something to work with there. And it's good for them. Like Bradley Barrett's goal was quite well taken, although like Stenny could have defended it a bit better. But just seeing them at the end, I know it was all about Stennismuir that day, but they had brought a decent contingent who were behind the goals, the other side of the pitch at the cages. And see, it meant a lot to them, just the players going over to them and applauding them. And just they've got another season of League Two football to look forward to. And you'd like to think, you always want to think a team coming up, it's all about progression. Can you get better than what was there previously? Can you do better? And you'd like to think that maybe if they're getting a different profile of player coming in, maybe if they can fix a pitch in New Dundas Park, you could maybe see them challenging for promotion next season, getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you kind of looked at their game after the drew with Stranraer. So I thought that was almost felt like a missed opportunity, actually, for both clubs. Elliott had just come in, and then after that Stranraer game, I might get the order wrong here, but it was Peterhead followed by East Fife and then Spartans and then Stenny. Like, that's a tough run. Peterhead, obviously in the playoffs. East Fife at the time thought might still challenge to get in the playoffs. Spartans are there, and then obviously Stenny are obviously the champions. They only lost to Spartans, and have played very, very well in all four of those games. So I fair play to Bonnyrigg. I did think I'd cursed them after I talked them up after the beat East Fife, and then they lost to Spartans. I was like, oh, here we go. But no, again, judging by what I watched at the weekend, I was quite impressed by them, and certainly after. We probably have been quite critical about how they play,
and deservedly I think, so. It's
totally.
But it's funny. It's like, you know, we talked about Dundee United and say if they want to go a bit more direct, they've got the player that can do that in Louis Moult. Like, Sadler just spends most of his time offside. Like, he's just, not very good. Doesn't read the game very well.
I mean, I think what has been proven to a degree over the last month is that they probably can play football. Like, they are a team that can maybe play a wee bit more football than we've seen over the first 8 months of the season. The problem is their best forward might still be Kieran McGarkey, even though he is ultimately not fit enough probably to play at League 2 level.
Yeah, it's a funny. I think they're perhaps in a bit of a quandary where, and if anyone had listened to the podcast when they were really in the mud, where I think it was after Robbie Horn had left, because Craig Fowler recorded it with Amy Canavan, and the point about Bonnyrigg being such a community club, and every club wants to be a community club, but it seems that it's perhaps more accented there. And ultimately, if you want to progress, the club will have to outgrow guys like Kieran McGarkey.
Yeah,
because it's like if you can't stay fit, then you're not much use to anyone. If you know what I mean. But then you don't want to lose that at the same time because he's part of the heritage of the club and all that. So,
which is all well and good. However, if you end up relegated to Lowland League again, then ultimately you failed. So you have to. You're right. You have to outgrow players. That loyalty is a good thing. It absolutely is. But in football, you can only have it to a certain degree, and Bonnyrigg probably have to move past that for next season.
Speaking of loyalty, do you know much about Ali Adams? Of course you do. You seen the way he conducts himself on social media? Just like
poorly.
Just tweeting like a wee 12-year-old schoolgirl, complaining about how he was treated at Arbroath.
But then delete some of them. So he'll tweet it, then delete it.
I saw he didn't, or he wasn't invited to the Player of the Year awards, but he wrote an acceptance speech, published it, and said, "I wasn't invited, but this is what I would have said."
It was a really bad... Actually, when I read what would have been his acceptance speech, it was probably a good thing that he didn't get invited. Because his acceptance speech was rubbish.
Very much like Father Ted accepting the Golden Cleric Award.
Do you know something? Maybe Ali Adams needs to go away and have a wee think about why he keeps getting bummed out of teams. There's a constant theme, and it's him.
Turn the lens inwards, Ali. Turn the lens inwards. Sean, we're finishing up. You have got your final game of the season. Weirdly enough, it's against Arbroath at Starts Park tomorrow. On Friday night. Friday night is tomorrow. You want it?
Yes, I am. Yes, they'll probably be 0-0 because they'll never beat them.
They're rubbish as well.
No, they're rubbish. Absolutely terrible. Just out of interest, I had a wee look at their form. So last time we played them was when they beat us 3-2. 2-0 up. Mm-hmm. Game was turned on its head. Arbroath won 3-2. Going into that game, Arbroath had won no games in 10. Since that game, they've lost 9 in a row. I honestly think that, bearing in mind the context, that might be one of Raith Rovers' worst results in recent history. Dreadful.
You have dropped your last two performances. You dropped 5 points against them.
Yep, 2-0 up on both occasions.
That's cost you the league. That's cost you the league. You could be going into this game thinking, well, if we get a win and maybe if Thistle can do us a favour. Arbroath cost you the league. There you go. You took 7 points. 7 points off Dundee United, but it was the games against Arbroath that cost you the league.
But just 4 and counting from the Red Lichties.
We are away at Stranraer tomorrow, and my associates and I are dressing up for it since it's a special occasion.
What are you dressed up as?
Kane from the WWE. No.
Is that a wrestler?
As a wrestler, yes.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
So I'm going as Kane from the WWE. You know who Kane is?
He had he had something wrong with his face and wore a leather mask. Turned out he didn't have any wrong with his face.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole backstory was he was supposed to have perished in a fire in Undertaker's parents' house, but was rescued by Paul Bearer. I hope I've got that lore right. Imagine if I've got it wrong. That's
quite the rescue. Yeah. If he'd perished.
Yeah, but then he's supposed to be all burned, but then it turns out he wasn't burned. But I mean, I hope I've got that right. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some people who have pulled their hands out their trousers to frantically tell me I've got my Kane lore wrong. But no, I'm going as Kane.
I'm fascinated about how your outfit is going to look.
Sean, you'll see it on social media. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll send you a photo of it because I tried it on earlier in the week. It's going to look absolutely magnificent. It's basically like bought off Amazon. It's like 50 quid. It's like a morph suit almost.
Right, okay.
It looks pretty fucking good.
I'm just wondering if if how you think magnificent means the same in my head. Really interested about this.
I'll text you, right? And I'll text you with the word magnificent ? And you can get back to me with your own thoughts on that.
Can't wait. Wish I was going to Stranraer.
Excellent. Well, there's still time. There's still time, Sean. There's still time. I'll thank you so much for listening to us, and do subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already. You really should have done, because there's some really good stuff in there. Some stuff that talks about all sorts of stuff, books and other stuff. But do give it a go. And unlike myself and my associates, because I can see myself getting kicked out of Stair Park for trying to do an elbow drop off the wall, like chucking someone over the wall and then doing an elbow drop over it. I think when you dress up like a wrestler, you turn into a bit of an arsehole and think that you actually are a wrestler. I can see myself getting chucked out of Stair Park. So unlike me, enjoy your football, but please do so respectfully. Thank you very much.